Wow. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is spooky time. Happy Halloween. And thank you, Ranger. I'm glad you guys like the emotes. I commissioned 10. I think I've only uploaded 5 or so. I have to. New emotes? Yes, Jambola, new emotes. There's a few more that I still have to upload, but there's only 7? Oh, okay, so there's only 3 I haven't gotten up yet. Fair enough. I have to look over the new ones and decide. Because unfortunately, you only get so many emotes between subs and just your follower emotes, and I don't want to start locking emotes behind tier 2 and tier 3 subs. So I gotta look at some of the old ones and see what I want to retire. I'm gonna put all of them, even the ones we've retired, on the Discord. So you can still use them there, but still, it's like, I mean, we can't get rid of Muscle Cat, because how else will we know Ranger's here if there's no Muscle Cat? And I mean, I have a new Hydrate emote, but the really pixelated cat drinking out of the cup is just so funny. Oh, yeah, no, I was planning on keeping that one. That's why I said I do have, like, an actual, like a sipping emote of, like, myself with a cup. But I'm like, I really like the pixelated cat one, so it's like, I gotta keep that one. And then, like, I'm looking at the emotes I have and the emotes we already have, and I'm like, which ones overlap? So it's like, technically, there's 2 hearts now. There's the cat with a heart, and then there's me with a heart. But it's like, the me with the heart, the cat with the heart's so cute, so maybe I'll retire that one, but I'll give it a couple days. I did send a couple cats away. Hi, Zon! My emotes are done! Yay! Not all of them are uploaded because I have to decide which cats, we switch out to another room. Which ones can only play in the Discord. 'Tis unfortunate, but it is how it goes. They only give you, what is it, 12 subscriber emotes and then like 5 follower emotes? So you gotta pick and choose. You love them? Thank you! No. I actually... Did you hear me, Ranger? I said we have to keep Muscle Cat, because how else will we know Ranger's around? That's the thing, right? Some of them have become so ingrained with, like, the brand identity of the Moonbeams that, like, I can't possibly retire them. If I do, it would be because I commissioned, a custom variation of it, because, like, Power Cat and, like, Muscle Cat and Sippy Cat were ones that Orihime, VTuber / graphic artist, did as part of, like, there was, like, Inktober a couple years ago. A bunch of people in the VTuber community decided to do the equivalent of Inktober, but with VTuber and streaming assets. So those were like free emotes that they did as part of that event, so. Luna, hello, good morning, happy Halloween. I mean, hello, not help. Help. I haven't even started reading the creepypastas yet. What do you mean, help? Chris, you're autocorrect. I feel you. I think out of the new emotes, out the ones that I've uploaded so far, Cool Haunted Shrine Maiden skin, thank you. Out of the new ones that I've uploaded so far, I think my favorites are the sus one. The judgment face is just kind of perfect. The head pad, obviously. That one's like super cute. Comfy's really cute, and also I really like the bonk. For when we get for when Sari sniper rifles something. I thought about asking for the sniper, like a sniper shot one, but I was like, well, let's go with standard bonk first. Next time, maybe I'll get a sniper. Ready to use them all? You like the C and the lurk? Thank you, yeah! They did a great job. Artist is like, let me know if there's edits. I'm like, no edits. These are absolutely perfect. I cannot wait. Three stream streak, thank you! Free ones too, that's nice. Yeah, I figured we gotta even it up, and one way to kind of keep stuff around is to put it in like the free slot. And you know, it's like, I could have put all of like the DD emotes and follower and made everyone else who's free stick with the cats, but I'm like, nah, let's put like the two like basic ones so everyone can give me head pats. You don't need to pay to give me head pats, and you don't need to pay to give me a heart. So there you go. Oh, behind your 3 sub, oh my god. Hilariously, my Doncho was joking at some point. It's like, what if you made your T3 reward, people can, like, GBF people can carry you in United Fight? 60-second blank, oh no, and not the tomato. Why are you gonna throw tomatoes at me? I'm here to tell a scary story. And squats and push-ups, fuck. Showing support is free, basically. Making me work before I read the scary stories? Okay, fine. I see how it is. I don't have my headphones plugged in. Beautiful. Beautiful. Ay! That's a scary story. Alright. Oh my gosh. Alright. Try to get in your chalice. You mean the flashlight? I suppose it does make a very good target. Surprise! Yeah, no, it's a flashlight. You know, for like when like they're in the kids shows when they're telling spooky stories and stuff, there's always some kid with using the flashlight under like their face to try and look terrifying. That's what I was going for. Okay, I will do the plank, the squats, the push-ups, and then we'll get cracking. We can chit-chat it between the stories. My goal is to read 4, but we'll see. I made like a list of like 10. So, cause I figured more is better than less. But thank you, Luna. Thank you for putting me to exercise before you head out. Have a good day. All right. We'll do the plank, then the push-ups, then the squats. Okay. Gotta decide my order of operations. Push up. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. And now the squats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ooh. Would love all of them in DD Court too? Of course, don't worry. They are going there too. I just got them at lunchtime. So when I got home, I hurried to upload them on Twitch at least. Don't know if I'll get around to putting them on the Discord tonight, but definitely this weekend. Yeah, must look at in Discord. Happy. Do. Now tomatoes. All the tomatoes. Alright. Sounds just about to end, so we'll let it taper off. You're just gonna hold it. You're just gonna hold it. It's your emotional support tomato. It's the emotional support tomato. Ah, there it is. Alright. So all of these stories are anywhere between like 10 minutes to read and like 30 minutes. We can chit-chat a little in between the stories. That's not a problem. This is basically a just chatting stream. We're like hanging out after dark. The apothecary's closed. We're just hanging out, eating candy, telling spooky stories, watching the kids run down the street. All that good stuff. Alright. Discord is fixed and real now? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes. Apparently the link had expired, just no one had told me that I forgot to check the box. Do you get trick-or-treaters? I do not. I'm in an apartment building, so generally apartment buildings forbid kids from going door to door. In apartment buildings. The apartment building kids will just go out to the other houses around the block. Some apartment buildings will have a table in the lobby where kids can, like, pick up some candy, but I do not get actual trick-or-treaters. Iduna does, though. She says, because she has a black cat, And he likes to sit with the pumpkins in the window, so I'm sure the children are ecstatic. Alright, so I think we've chit-chatted for a good 20 minutes. Let's get started with our very first story. Thank you to the folks that did contribute to the list. It was nice to hear what some of y'all were looking for. That helped me pick other stories as well to round out the list and pad it out. So we're gonna start with a classic, one that I think is decently well known in anime and gaming spheres. It's been in anime, it's been in movies. It is Kisaragi Station. I was going to suggest a VTuber story, but it was too long to read. I understand, yeah. There were some of them that looked very interesting, and it's like 60 plus minutes. I'm like, oof. It's like, I mean, I can read for that long. I don't know if I want to spend a whole stream on just one story. Maybe another time. Alright, so Kisaragi Station's decently well known. It's probably one of the first creepypastas I heard of. Was definitely floating around at the same time Yume Nikki, the game, and all that stuff was. So, let's get started. This was originally posted on 2chan, which is like, 4chan, basically. Supposedly it was an actual thread someone posted there, I'm not sure. That might be part of the urban legend. 2chan is kind of inaccessible to outsiders outside of Japan, so no way to really check, especially since it's been so long. But yeah, Kisaragi Station was featured in Otherworldly Picnic, which was anime about two girls investigating urban legends and stuff like that. So let's get cracking. This is Kisaragi Station. It's done in the style of a thread, so I'll try and vary up my voice a little bit. But keep in mind, all of this stuff is going to be posted by different people, different commenters. Hasumi is the OP, the person who is experiencing the story. Everything else is by people commenting on the thread. Yes, hi Pep, are you here to join in? Cat taps me on the shoulder. Alrighty, Kisaragi Station. This may just be my imagination. Can I post it anyway? Go ahead. What's going on? I've been riding a certain train for a while, but something seems off. I always take this train to work, but it hasn't stopped at any stations for the past 20 minutes or so. It usually only takes 5 minutes, 7 or 8 at worst. Oh, and there's 5 other passengers, but they're all sleeping. Did you take the express train by mistake? Is it the high-speed train? Well, it's possible I may have just missed my stop. I'll wait a little longer. If anything else strange occurs, I might bring it up here. Try going to the car on the end to see the conductor, maybe? It would be really bad if the driver had an epileptic fit or something. You should check on the conductor. Still no signs of stopping. So alright, I'll go take a look. There are blinds or something covering the windows, so I couldn't see the conductor or the driver. The route is a private rail in Shizuoka. Knock on the window? I tried that, but nobody answered. Can you see out the window? Names of station you're passing, etc.? We came out of a tunnel, so we're dropping speed slightly. There usually aren't any tunnels, though. It's a train from Shin Hamamatsu. Looks like we're finally stopping at a station. You aren't going to get off there, are you? We've stopped at Kisaragi Station. I wonder if I should get off. I've never heard of this place before. Definitely check it out. No, stay on until the last stop. Oh, but it's probably already departing now. When did you get on the train? I've gotten off the train. The station's unmanned. I believe I got on the train at 11:40. I'm not finding any information on Kisaragi Station. And Hasumi? Your train was going for over an hour? Well, that's really strange. Yeah, I'm not getting any results for Kisaragi Station. I'm looking for a schedule so I can get back, but I can't find one. The train is still stopped, so it'd probably be safest to get back on. Oh, well, it left while I was writing that. Is there anyone nearby or any buildings? It's cold out, so be careful. I'll look for a taxi from the station. Thank you very much. Sounds good. Take care. Way past the last train at an unmanned station? Really questionable if you'll have any luck finding a taxi there. And so Hasumi became an inhabitant of the two-dimensional world. There doesn't seem to be any taxis anywhere. Call 110, call the police? Call the taxi company? There's a telephone booth nearby. Look up the taxi company in the phone book and call. I called home and asked to be picked up, but neither of my parents seem to know where Kisaragi Station is. They'll look for it on the map so they can come get me, but I'm a little scared now. What about the others? Are you the only one who got off the train? I checked online too, and the name Kisaragi Station isn't coming up. Am I wrong in assuming it's around Shin Hamamatsu? I'll check Yahoo. I looked for a public phone, but there's nothing. And no one else got off, so I'm alone now. It's definitely called Kisaragi. Sometimes they have phones outside the station. Looking into it, apparently it's written with the kanji for devil, but it's read Kisaragi. Devil Station? Yikes. Are you a gaming nerd? Because a game comes up if you Google it. Tell us the names of the stations before and after Kisaragi. What do you mean a game? It doesn't say what the next and previous stations are. Walk back along the track. If you start running now, you might catch up to the train. There must be houses around the station, right? Yes, there are. I didn't quite notice since I was panicking. I'm waiting for my parents to call while walking along the track. I tried checking town information on iMode, but it gave me a point error or something. I want to go home. There's really nothing around here. All I can see are fields and mountains. But I think I'll be able to make it back if I go down the tracks. So I'll keep pushing on. Thank you very much. Treat this as a joke if you will, but can I come to you if I encounter any more trouble? Of course. Just be careful out there. Sure. Just make sure you don't run out of battery. Your phone's your lifeline right now. Don't get lost, and be careful in the tunnel. Huh. You can get signal out in the middle of nowhere? I kinda think you shouldn't stray far from the station. All alone on a cold night? At a station with no attendants? Soon the lights could go out and it'll be pitch black. So it really might be safest to wait for daybreak at the station, though. Oh jeez, this sounds bad. I got a call from my father, and he had many questions, but simply couldn't find my location. I've been told to call 110, which I'm a little opposed to doing, but I'll try asking them to help me now. I really think you should wait until it gets lighter out before you do anything. Waiting all alone in the dead of night? And in some ominous place? Yikes. Going through a tunnel alone in the dead of night and on some ominous train line? Yikes. I called 110 and tried my absolute best to explain the situation, but they thought it was all a joke and got angry at me. So I got scared and apologized. Apologized for what? Should probably give up for today. Wait for the first train. What's it like around the station? What's there? I hear what sounds like a beating drum mixed with some kind of bell way off in the distance. Honestly, I have no idea what to do at this point. Get back to the station for now, Hasumi. It's best to return to where you started when you're lost. Here's where it gets going. Are they having a festival or what? You might think I'm kidding, but I'm too scared to look behind me. I do want to go back to the station, but I don't dare turn around. Run, and don't look back. You can't go back to the station now. Run through the tunnel. I'm sure you'll find you're not far. Someone behind me yelled, "Hey, don't walk on the track. That's dangerous." I looked around expecting to see an attendant and saw a one-legged man, but he vanished. I think I'm too scared to move. I told you not to look back. Run! Calm down and listen to Big Bro, okay? Check out where the drum's coming from. There's bound to be somebody playing it. Where the hell are you planning to take Hasumi? Why'd you know it was an old man if it was just a single leg? I think Hasumi meant an old man who lost one of his legs. Must have been an old man who died and lost a leg after walking back along the tracks. I can't walk or run any further. The drumming sound is getting a little closer. Wait for dawn. It won't be scary in the daylight. I'm glad I stayed on the train. I'm still alive, but I fell and started bleeding. And I broke a heel, so I'm sitting still on the ground. I don't want to die now. Should be safe if you leave the tunnel. Once you get out of there, call for help immediately. I called home. Dad's calling the police, but the sound keeps getting closer. I hope to God that's not the sound of a train. But it might be too late. I finally managed to make it to the front of the tunnel. The name says Isanuki. The sound's still getting closer, so I'm going to leave the tunnel. But I'm safe once I get to the other side. I'll post again. Good luck. This is the end. Forget about trains and stations. Forget about going back. Forget about someone chasing you. The sound you're hearing is just something you imagined. Run out of the tunnel. If you stop, you'll only succumb to something which does not belong in this world. I left the tunnel. There's someone up ahead. It looks like all your advice was right after all. Thank you so much. My face is such a mess from tears, he might just mistake me for a monster. Wait, Hasumi! Don't die on us! Stop, that can't be good. Someone there? This late at night? That's suspicious. He seems gentle and was worried for me. He called for a train to take me to the nearest station. Apparently there's some kind of business hotel there. I'm truly, truly thankful to you all. Hasumi, please answer me this one thing. Can you ask that man what that place is? Is he really gentle? He sounds kind of scary from what you said. That guy's no good. Why is he by the tracks at this hour? He must have been a corpse or something. Hasumi, run! I asked him where it was, and he said Hina. That seems extremely unlikely, though. Hasumi, get off the train! Excuse me, Hasumi, where's Hina? We've been headed towards the mountains for some time. It really doesn't strike me as a place where trains would go, and he stopped talking to me entirely. Probably because you're constantly messing with your phone, Hasumi. Oh no! Oh no! Did you contact your parents after you got out of the tunnel and received aid? Question mark from this guy? Hasumi, please call 110. This might be your last chance. Hasumi, my battery's almost run out. Things are getting strange. So I think I'm going to make a run for it. He's been talking to himself about bizarre things for a while now. To prepare for just the right time, I'm going to make this my last post for now. Afterwards, Asumi was never heard from again. Dun, dun, dun! Or Asumi. Hi, Velmo! Welcome in! We're just chit-chatting and also reading some creepypastas in the spirit of the season. I hope you're doing well! That was Kisaragi Station, which is one of the classics, I dare say. It was one of the first ones I ever knew anyway. Dun 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 dun. You've been listening? It was interesting? I'm glad. Alright. Very good story? Excellent. Yeah, Kisaragi Station's good. So many people write such interesting creepypastas, urban legends stuff. And it's all for free online, which is cool. Alright. There was no class, but there was a Halloween party. That's nice. Enjoy, because yeah, I mean, when you become a working class adult, like a working adult, sometimes there's Halloween stuff, sometimes there isn't. For real, yeah. Which one I'll read next? Usually not. Correct. Here we go. While I was looking for creepypastas to read, I fell in love with the work of this person on Reddit called Head of Spectre. They've written so many short stories that they've posted on Reddit. Like, literally, the list is like 50 plus. Like, they've just been going ham for years. And a lot of them are nice creepypastas, so I included a few of those on the list as well. So, let's add to the fun and the spook. This one is called Should You Meet Helena Malibu? Do not ask about your fate. Let me just increase the size to make it a little easier to read. In a perfect world, I would have chopped these up to make a script broadcast journalist style to make it super easy to read. But such is life. When you're an adult, you buy candy, saying in case kids cover trick-or-treating while hoping they won't. That is so true. You always end up eating so much leftovers. Alright, should you meet Helena Malibu, do not ask about your fate. I never sought out Helena Malibu, although I had heard of her before. Visit enough small music clubs in the French Quarter of New Orleans, and you'll likely to meet someone who's seen her, and maybe, just maybe, if you're in the exact right place at the exact right time and know just where to look, you'll see her too. Not a lot of people talk about Helena Malibu, and I suspect that's just the way she likes it, although just looking at her, you'd probably think she was going for the complete opposite. She only ever appears after dark, and when she does, she's almost always dressed in a black evening gown, with a white fur shawl draped over her shoulders. You're unlikely to ever see her on the street. Supposedly, when she appears, she'll come through the door, despite not having been on the other side a moment ago. sometimes she won't be alone either. Sometimes one or two large snow-white dogs will accompany her. Those who've seen her dogs describe them as being of an unfamiliar breed, but with wolf-like features. Her dogs never bark or cause any disturbances. In fact, they move almost in perfect sync with her, almost as if they were somehow part of her. They will sit on either side of her in whatever booth she takes, and they will stand vigil beside her. Though she appears to be a young, blonde woman in her 30s, I've heard people claim that she's been around for as long as they can remember. Some of those people could probably remember a lot, quite a ways back too. Those same people also claim that months or maybe even years can pass before anyone sees her again. But there's never any doubt that it's her when she stops by. While Malibu may be a rather enigmatic woman, she's certainly not known for being unfriendly. Everyone I know who's met her describes her as having a kind, gentle voice and a somewhat melancholy demeanor. However, in spite of that, most who've met her still offer up a single warning. Should you ever meet Helena Malibu, do not ask her about your fate. See, according to some of the old-timers, Malibu knows a thing or two about the occult. Some of the more superstitious sorts have managed to coax a few tricks out of her over some drinks, and others have asked if she could help them see the future. According to these folks, should you ask, she's likely to just smile sadly and ask, "Are you sure you'd like to know?" If you're brave enough to say yes, then she'll humor you. Then she'll take an old tarot card deck out of her purse and offer you a reading. Personally, I've never really bought into the occult, and while I've had a tarot card reading done before, I figured that anything it predicts is just your brain looking for meanings and connections where none exist. But when I saw a woman with the white fur shawl and the two wolf-like dogs seated quietly beside her at the Morrigan Jazz Club, well, I knew immediately who she was, and I just couldn't help myself. I stopped by the bar and picked up 2 bourbons before approaching her. Some of the old-timers mentioned she has a preference for the stuff, and I wanted to make a good first impression. The dogs looked up at me first, intense blue eyes studying me as I drew near, but they neither reacted or got up. Malibu herself never took her eyes off the musician on the stage, although before I got the chance to open my mouth to say anything, she spoke. "Is that for me?" "It is," I said, tripping over my words a little bit. "Well then, how kind. Please, have a seat. I could use a little company." With a silver cigarette holder trailing smoke, she gestured to the spot beside her, and I quietly took it. I set one of the bourbons down in front of her, but I didn't speak. She hadn't bothered to look at me once. The focus was strictly on the jazz band on the stage, and it wasn't until they finished their song that she finally said another word. "My apologies, I didn't mean to ignore you or to be rude, but I don't stop by as often as I'd like to, so when I do, I'd like to savor it. It's something of a treat for myself." "No worries, it's fine," I assured her and watched as she took a sip of the bourbon. She offered a warm smile before fixing me in a stare just as intense as her dog's. Eyes looked blue at a glance, although, well, maybe it was the light, but I could have sworn there was a violent sheen to them. "What can I do for you, Arthur?" It didn't dawn on me until later that I never actually told her my name. But she spoke as if she knew me. I've heard about you, and I thought I'd say hi," I said and immediately felt embarrassed. She just laughed. "Well, I do appreciate it. Nice to know my reputation around here hasn't diminished yet." really do love New Orleans. My youngest sister is more of a Vegas girl. She told me not too long ago that the art's so different. But I really couldn't disagree more. The music, the festivals, the people. Something about it rubs me just the right way. It's not as shallow or greedy as Vegas. Here it all seems so much more sincere. My job can be, well, rather difficult. I'm never quite away from work, but every now and then it's nice to take a moment and enjoy the atmosphere, you know? Yeah. Yeah, I get you, I said. Malibu nodded. I thought you might. I imagine this is your way of relaxing too, after a hard day of work. She took a drag from her cigarette as her eyes returned to the stage. The band had begun to play again, and it seemed rude to speak while she was enjoying the music. Not that I hadn't been enjoying it too. She hadn't been wrong. After a long week at the office, it was nice to cut loose. Ty went on and enjoy one of the music clubs. For a few songs, we sat together and drank. She offered me a cigarette at one point, and I declined it. She smiled at me as if that had been the right answer. It wasn't until the band actually took off for a break that I asked my question. I heard a rumor that you could tell people about their fate, I said. Is this true? Her smile faded and was replaced by a more distraught look. Her eyes returned from me, and she set her cigarette holder down so that the cigarette hovered just over an ashtray. Are you sure you'd like to find out? She asked. There was something about the way she said it, something about her tone, that sent a chill through me and almost made me decide against it. Fate is not consistently kind, Arthur. I don't mean to be distressing when I say that. Life comes with blissful highs and painful lows, but knowing what's coming does not change the fact that it will eventually come. Even if you know and do everything in your power to take another path, you'll eventually find something else. So, you can see the future then? I asked. Yes and no. We all make our own future. Can I tell you how you're going to die? No, but I know what's waiting for you. I know the most likely outcome. If you really wanted me to, I could advise you. But ultimately, where your path leads you is up to you, and you alone. I just have a much wider perspective of the world that allows me to see much further down the road than you can. Honestly, it sounded like a complete non-answer to me. And maybe it was dumb, but that kind of upset me a little. Here I was, sitting beside this odd woman I'd heard others speak of with such reverence and as pleasant as she seemed. While I wasn't exactly buying all the stories I'd heard about her supposedly flawless fortune-telling ability, maybe that's what made me push her. Alright. Well, would you do a reading for me? If you'd like, she said, although there was a reluctance in her tone. If you're certain you'd like to hear it. Yeah, I would. I think she knew that I was challenging her. Her eyes met mine, and I saw her expression darken slightly. Even though I kept a polite tone, I got the impression that she saw right through me. She took another sip of brandy before setting it down. Well, I suppose there's time, she said before she reached into her purse and took out the worn old deck of tarot cards. She gave them a quick shuffle before taking the 4 from the top. Dutifully, she set them face down on the table in a cross pattern. Then she flipped the top card. It depicted a man lying down on the ground, with 10 swords plunged into his back. I expected her to try and interpret some meaning from the card, but she only looked at it quietly before she spoke with an almost chilling certainty. You feel secure at where you are now in your life, Arthur, she said. A pleasant job. A quiet apartment. Not everything will change, But change will come, and it will destroy some of what you've built. It won't be long, and it will not be easy. But I suppose that much is inevitable. No matter how safe you think you are, circumstances always change. That you cannot avoid nor escape. Prepare accordingly. Learn some new skills, perhaps. They'll survive, but not unscathed. She looked up at me, her gaze dead serious. Then she flipped the second card. It showed a tower being destroyed. This one I recognized, the tower. Supposedly one of the worst cards you could get. I'd be lying if I said I did feel a little uneasy to see it there. The change will be tumultuous, she said. It will affect you in more ways than one. It will affect others too. Keep your loved ones close. Your friends, your family. One may not be with you for much longer. What? Her tone of voice sent a chill through me. Was she seriously telling me somebody in my life was going to die? That's one hell of a fucking prediction to make. I looked down at the tower card again. While part of me still felt sure that this had to be some sort of hoax, still couldn't quiet the very real unease in my stomach and the fear of losing someone I loved. She flipped another card. It depicted a hand holding an overflowing cup, the Ace of Cups. This change will take you to someplace new, Malibu said. The most likely roads leads you into the arms of someone who you'll find wonderful, but it won't last forever. Don't pursue it when it ends. Let go. Move on. There's even better things waiting for you on the road ahead. She flipped the last card. It depicted Death riding upon his pale horse. Don't be afraid of what's coming, but don't be fearless or reckless either. You have trouble waiting ahead of you, and there's not a thing in this world you can do to avoid it. But you'll come out on the other side. You'll be wounded, but you may well be better off than you were before. With that, she was done. She looked at me as if waiting for my response, and I had half a mind to tell her she was full of shit. Those are some bold claims, I said after a moment, and Malibu managed a soft yet dreary smile, sorry. You wanted to know. I could tell you more, but I shouldn't. There's an art form to this. Tell people too much, and they will fight to stray from their designated path. Tell them too little, and it's far too vague. I believe I've told you enough. Given you fair warning. Consider this fair warning? I asked. Most of my sisters would have phrased it all much more bluntly. One just to see you squirm, the other out of sheer lack of social grace. As I said, in the end, you'll be all right. But life will get harder for a time. You won't be alone in that, but it will get harder. There was an earnestness in her voice that made me uneasy. If she was bullshitting me, she had the best goddamn poker face I'd ever seen. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't left just a little speechless. Thank you for the bourbon, Arthur, she said. From the corner of my eye, I noticed her dogs getting up. She put on a grim smile before patting the top of my hand. I wish you the best of luck. I tried to forget. With that, sorry, I skipped a paragraph. Oh no! True horror change, absolutely. With that, she was gone. I watched her leave, shadowed by her two white dogs, who looked back at me before they all disappeared out the door and left me alone. I tried to forget about the night in the jazz club, and about Helena Malibu's cryptic tarot reading, and to some small extent, I did. But I still lingered in the back of my mind, never quite going away. And about 6 months later, when I started hearing talk of a pandemic, well, it stayed on my mind. I was laid off in April, and I'd fucked up and gone into some trouble a few months back. And when the pandemic squeezed my employer to start trimming the fat from the team, I was one of the first to go. There went my steady paycheck, and the job market wasn't looking too shit hot either. Eventually, I got lucky enough to find something, though. It was in coding, not my usual area of expertise, but I'd made a point to educate myself over the past year or so. I'd always been meaning to learn more about it, and looking back at it, I suppose Malibu's advice was just the kick in the ass I needed. I got to work from home at least, and that kept me indoors during the worst that the absolute fucking ridiculous beginning of the 2020s had to offer. And I met Haley. Haley was another coder at my company. We'd started chatting over Slack for work purposes, with the odd personal question here and there, judging by her profile picture. She was quite the looker, with chiseled, confident features, dirty blonde hair, and freckles across her face. It wasn't long before I asked if she wanted to stop by my place for pizza, beer, and a movie. Her little visit turned into an overnight one, and after that, well, things were starting to look pretty good. Haley was probably the thing that kept me sane during the worst of the pandemic. Some days she'd stop by my place in the morning, and we'd work together. One of us on the couch, and the other one at my desk. Sometimes we'd take breaks, and by the time we got back to work, we were only half dressed, and what we weren't wearing was all over the living room floor. For as long as I live, I'll be cherishing those bittersweet memories. Haley kissed me like it was going to be the last time every time, and having her around, well, just made me happy. Within 3 months, we were talking about moving in, and I was convinced that I'd found my soulmate then. Just like Malibu had predicted, everything went to shit again. My dad was the one who got sick. It wasn't COVID, it was cancer. But it killed him all the same. One day, he was telling me he wasn't feeling 100% and fell down getting out of bed. 2 weeks later, we were trying to plan some sort of funeral. The cancer hit him hard, and it hit him fast. By the time the doctors found it, it was too late. All we could do was say our goodbyes. My biggest regret is that we couldn't really have a funeral for him. Maybe if we could have, it would have been easier. Instead, we had a short graveside service with only close family in attendance. It felt anemic. He'd deserved better. I'd asked Haley to come. She'd refused. She said she didn't like funerals, and from there, things just got worse. Suddenly we were fighting. She complained that I was miserable all the time. Did I understand why I was acting so weird, and suddenly that perfect woman I'd so quickly fell in love with seemed a lot less charming. About a week after my dad passed, she stopped coming by my place to work. We never officially broke up, but judging by how she seemed to avoid talking to me unless she absolutely had to afterwards, I figured it out. Every message and email was curt and professional, as if she couldn't get over her resentment of me for not getting over my father's death fast enough. I won't pretend that it did hurt me one a bit. That's my aside, that's not in the story. But I'd truly felt something for her, and to have her treat me so coldly over something anyone with a heart would grieve over was hard to deal with. I sent her a few personal emails trying to reconcile, but she never responded. It wasn't until a few months later, when she announced she was pregnant, that I gave up. She'd started dating someone else at the office who'd made the mistake of knocking her up. Oh, man. 2 months later, she was fired after getting a DUI. Wow. Apparently I wasn't her first. It wasn't until she was gone that I accepted that I dodged a bullet, and by then, I was with someone else. Someone who treated me a whole hell of a lot better. I still think about Helena Malibu sometimes. I think about the things she said, the things she told me about my future. I wonder if she made it all up, or if she knew exactly what was waiting for me. I still can't completely say for sure. The world is slowly starting to go back to normal now, though. My life is different than it was the day I met Helena in Malibu. Everything has changed. But I'm still kicking. Hell, I'm probably better off than I was now. My new girlfriend and I will hit up the music club sometimes, now that they're opening back up. It's not quite back to normal yet, but it's nice to be able to go out again, even in a limited capacity. Sometimes I catch myself looking for Malibu at the tables, but I never see her. Some of the old-timers doubt she'll be back in town until the pandemic completely blows over, but I still imagine what I'd say if I ever saw her again. I think I'd ask her how she knows, because I don't think she needs the tarot cards to see the future. I think she just knows what's waiting for us up ahead, and she knows that sometimes it's better not to know. Ooh, that one wasn't so much like full on spooky, but that Helena Malibu does have an air about her. Very interesting. Do you guys believe in tarot? Duna reads tarot. I've never learned. I've thought about learning. Tarot is an interesting thing. Another good story? Thank you. Excellent. Let's see here. Clap, 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 clap. Yay! Alright. Also, you gotta go. Okay, Ranger, thank you so much for coming on by. Much appreciated. I spent all this time curating stories for you and you throw a tomato at me! Terrible. I should get rid of Power Cat just for that. I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm kidding. Redeemed headpad, thanks. The headpad's not working today because I have the costume on, but much appreciated. Ugh. Stretch. Headpad, headpad, headpad. Yes! The headpadding mode looks so cute in chat. I'm so happy. Alright, it's ad break, so for the sake of the folks who aren't subscribed, I'll wait until it's done before continuing the next story. I think I definitely have a couple more in me. I don't want to go too ham and strain my voice, but the spookiest thing of all, ad breaks. So true, huh? Happy, happy, happy. That's cat sound gets stuck in my head all the time. My gosh. I jumped a little from that because I looked away from the screen. I came prepared. You came prepared. We love the preparations. Dun, dun, dun. Alright, ad break should be finishing up. So, let us roll on back to it. Let's see. Which one do I want to go with next? Okay. This one seems a little bit more medium length, so we'll go with that one for now. This is another Head of Spectre one. Like I said, I ended up falling in love with their work, and I pulled a whole bunch of their stuff. So, this is called There's Something in the Sinkhole Under My House. Uh-oh. Witness statement of Muhammad Alan Malik regarding a sinkhole found during renovations to his basement between June 25th and July 19th, 2021. Statement provided to the Toronto Police Department on July 21st, 2021. So this takes place not like somewhat locally to me, but like within the area. I used to live in Toronto, so... Statement. My wife Justine and I moved into the house on George Street about 4 years ago. We knew going in it was a bit of a fixer-upper. I mean, in this market, what else are you going to get? And I mean, considering that if you're buying a house in an actual big city... Yeah, Florida is known for many sinkholes. Oh, yeah. We started, but it was our first home together. Our first real home. It could have been a complete shithole, and I still would have seen it as a palace. We started with the repairs as soon as we moved in. There was a lot to be done. We had to replace the windows. We redid the bathrooms and the kitchen, and replaced some of the flooring. The basement wasn't exactly a high priority for me at the time. It was more of a project I'd figured I'd tackle when we had time and money. At the time, we really only used the basement for storage anyway. That was where we put all the boxes we couldn't be bothered to unpack, or the things we didn't need year-round seasonal decoration. The cushions for the patio furniture, the canopy of the gazebo, and other stuff like that. I did eventually plan to fully finish the basement and turn it into a rec room with only a section off to the side for storage. But as life went on, that just got pushed lower and lower on my list of priorities. Justine got pregnant, so I focused more on the baby and on my actual 9 to 5, just to make sure we were in a good place financially. We slowed down with the renovations since the big ones were done. I put a little bit of money aside from each paycheck for the basement, but I didn't pay that much attention to the growing nest egg I had until recently when I realized I'd blown past my savings goal a couple months back. I figured that since I had the money and our son Darius was getting older now, it was time to finally get around to actually finishing the basement. So that's exactly what I did. I built up some new walls to give the basement a couple of different rooms. One was a living room, one was an office. One was an office, one was just meant to be a nice playroom for Darius, and the last one was just for storage. I got all of that set up just fine, and started on the flooring next. I was just about to be done with the living room, and had been moving furniture down there, when I found out about the sinkhole. My friend Salim and I had been in the middle of moving the furniture when the ground crumbled. We'd set one couch down in the center of the room and turned around for just about 2 seconds. When we turned back, the couch was breaking through the wood flooring I'd installed and sinking into the ground. I remember Salim and I both froze and stared at it before figuring out what was going on. Then we kept our distance before running upstairs to get my family out and call the fire department. We got lucky. It wasn't a very big sinkhole. maybe about 4 or 5 feet across at most, and the rest of the house was still relatively structurally sound. Still, I don't know how the hell I'd missed it. I mean, there had to have been some sort of warning sign, right? Some sign that the concrete was unstable? I mean, shit, what if it gave while I'd been standing on it or something, or worse, while Justina or Darius were standing on it? We spent the next few days at a hotel until it was concluded that it was safe to go back into the house. I guess it was really only impacting a small area under the floor of the basement. The rest of the foundation was miraculously not damaged. I was told that as so long as I got it handled immediately, we should be fine. I took that as great news. I mean, this was every homeowner's nightmare. But it was better than finding out your house was so fucked up that it was past livable, right? I hired a contractor to get the thing filled in. He was a family friend, and I trusted him to get the job done right, and fairly inexpensively. He was booked pretty solid until the end of July, early August. Not ideal, but I figured I could tolerate the giant hole in my basement until I had time to get him in. Until my guy could get in, I covered it up with a piece of plywood and told my son not to play downstairs. Now, about a week after the sinkhole had opened up, Salim and his family were over for dinner. We were having a barbecue out back, and we got to talking. I guess his kids had been asking to see the sinkhole and were under the impression that they'd be allowed to go inside. Kids, right? Well, obviously neither of us were going to put his kids in a sinkhole, but I guess their questions had gotten him curious about just what was in there. I told him it was probably just dirt, but he still wanted to go in and take some pictures, just to show them to his kids. After a while, I figured I might as well just let him. Maybe we could get my couch out of there while we were at it. I mean, it was a good couch. I didn't really want to lose it if I could help it. Bad idea. I can see where this is going. So Salim and I went downstairs and we removed the plywood covering. The sinkhole didn't look that deep. Maybe about 6 to 8 feet. You wouldn't want to go down there without a way out, but I figured we could make it work. I got a ladder from the garage to put in the hole and sent Salim down first. The couch hadn't been that heavy. So I figured that maybe we could get some rope around it, and between the two of us, we could push and pull it back up. Salim went down the ladder and I tossed the rope to him. But when I looked down, he was just looking around the sinkhole with this look of awe on his face. He kept telling me I had to come down and see it for him myself. The couch could wait. I couldn't imagine just what was down there to grab Salim's attention like that. So I climbed down the ladder. He was right. I had to see it for myself. I've seen pictures of sinkholes online before. The walls are usually just made of dirt, not smooth stone blocks. Oh god, the Minecraft. The Minecraft holes. And normal sinkholes definitely don't have pictures in them? Oh man. Salim had taken out his phone and was shining the light on the stone walls. In some sort of faded paint or dye, someone had drawn crude images of people that were little different than stick figures. In the image, they all seemed to be running from something. A single man painted it red. Salim said something like, "That's some spooky looking shit, right?" Before continuing through the sinkhole, which was a hell of a lot longer than I expected it to be. In fact, the more I looked, the more I couldn't help but think it looked more like a tunnel. I looked back up towards where the sinkhole had opened. There were smooth chiseled stones in the ceiling, though some looked to have fallen away near the edge of the hole. I could see their broken remains on the floor beneath my couch. They'd probably come loose over time and fallen down, exposing the floor of my basement as they did. This wasn't a sinkhole. This was something else. Salim was keeping his flashlight on the images painted on the stone walls. Most depicted the red man attacking people, standing over them and seemingly tearing at them. I turned on my own flashlight to look down and see if I could find the end of the tunnel. In one direction, there was just darkness as far as I could see. I couldn't imagine how far down it went. In the other direction, though, I saw what looked like some sort of ending. Salim saw it too. Slowly, we made our way down the tunnel, getting closer and closer to the end we could see. As we drew nearer, I began to realize that what was looming before us was a stone door. At some point, long ago, it had probably been red, but the paint on it was faded in all but a few places. Salim got there first and took some photos of it on his phone. I think he even recorded some video. While he was doing that, I tried to open the door. It was too heavy for me to budge on my own. And even with Salim helping me, we didn't get it to move. It was just too heavy. I'm not sure how anyone could have opened it. We took a few more pictures before heading back. Salim wanted to explore the other side of the tunnel, so we followed it for a little bit, although not very far. We only walked for about 6 or 7 minutes before we found a section where the tunnel had collapsed in on itself, and I convinced him it probably wasn't the best idea to stick around after that. We climbed a ladder back into my basement and covered the hole with plywood again. While we got back upstairs, neither of us could stop talking about what we'd seen. Salim's kids were obviously thrilled by the whole thing, but I honestly couldn't help but feel a little uneasy about it. That whole place had just seemed so impossible. Like, we live just outside of Toronto, Canada, if you're not a local, that part of the world isn't exactly known for its ruins. I showed my wife some of the pictures we'd taken that night as we talked about what to do. Neither of us were exactly sure what to do when you found some weird archaeological shit in your basement. But we knew we had to call someone. Eventually, we sent out an email to a guy from the University of Toronto by the name of Dr. Donald Richards. He was one of the professors of one of the anthropology programs there. We figured that maybe he could make sense of what the hell we were looking at, and the morning after we sent the email, Dr. Richards had sent us a reply. Hi, Muhammad and Justine. Thank you for reaching out with this. You've certainly found something interesting. Just from the images you provided, I'm unable to determine just who left these ruins behind or for what purpose. I would love the opportunity to take a closer look at this if possible. My schedule is fairly booked until this weekend, but perhaps I could see this tunnel for myself on either the coming Saturday or Sunday? I'd love the opportunity to document it before you have to seal it up again. Sincerely, Donald. I told him Saturday would be just fine. The week sort of carried on uneventfully for the most part. I told Salim what was going on. Obviously, I figured he'd want to be there when Dr. Richards took a look at the place. Justine seemed to just want to get the whole thing over with, and really, I couldn't blame her. Neither of us wanted to go down into the basement. I guess it was just my imagination running away with me. But I did really want to be alone with that sinkhole. Maybe this sounds silly, but I kept imagining some of the stones in that ceiling falling away, leaving weak spots in the basement floor for more holes to open up if I stepped on them at just the right time. Honestly, until that whole space beneath my house was filled in, I wanted to spend as little time in the basement as possible, if for no other reason than my own safety. When I started hearing noises downstairs, though, I had to investigate. It was pretty late at night when I first heard them. I'd gone to bed a little earlier and woke up just past midnight. I couldn't get back to sleep, so I figured I'd get up, have some water, and watch some TV. I was in the kitchen pouring myself a drink and debating nuking some leftovers when I heard it. A faint, distant scratching. Coming from somewhere in the house. Like an animal moving around. It stopped for a moment to listen. It was hard to tell exactly where it was coming from at first, but I knew it was inside the house. It had to be. I checked the living room and even gone to the back door to look outside. Nothing. The sound was strongest inside the kitchen, near the basement door. I started thinking about the sinkhole and opened the door to listen. I could hear the scratching even louder. It was definitely coming from downstairs. Slowly, I started descending the steps, stopping on the last one out of an admittedly childish fear of the floor collapsing under me. The lights of the basement were off, but I could hear the scratching, and in the low light from the kitchen, I could see the plywood I'd put over the hole in the floor. There was movement coming from under it, the sounds of something scraping against the stone walls down there. I stared for a few minutes, eyes narrowed as I listened to it moving around. The scraping came and went. It was there. Something was down there. An animal, maybe? Was it exactly crazy to suggest that there might be some rats or even raccoons down there? I didn't know a lot about animals, but I could have sworn that whatever was down there sounded like something bigger. But if there was anything that big down there, Salim and I definitely would have noticed it. I stared at the plywood for a bit before deciding that just for the sake of security, I'd reinforce it a little bit. I turned the lights on and braved the treacherous basement floor for a few moments to grab some of the things we'd already brought down, and pulling them over to weigh down the edges of the plywood. The scratching sound in the tunnel beneath seemed to pause when it heard me moving around. I assumed I'd probably scared whatever it was off. Once I was confident that an army of raccoons was about to break through the plywood and invade my basement, I shut the lights off and headed back upstairs. As I closed the door, I was already hearing the scratching noise. It sounded just a bit different this time. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I could have sworn that it sounded like something was scratching at the plywood itself this time. I told Justine about the scratching I'd heard the next day, and that we'd probably need to capture or kill whatever was down there before we could fill it in. She wasn't exactly thrilled by the news, since that was probably going to be another expense. But at least she knew. As the week went on, I heard scratching a few more times from the tunnel under the basement. Sometimes I even heard it during the day. But neither of us thought about it too hard. Saturday eventually rolled around, and with it came Dr. Richards. He was somewhere between 50 and 60, with horn-rimmed glasses, short, graying hair, and a stony expression. He greeted us warmly when we arrived, and we sat down for a few minutes to talk about how we'd come across the tunnel. I watched him taking notes on a little notepad as we spoke. After a few minutes, he asked if we could see the tunnel, and I told him he could. Salim and I led him to the basement and pulled the things I'd used to weigh the plywood down off. I told Richards that I'd heard movement inside and thought there might be rats or something down there. Just a friendly warning. When we pulled the plywood off, Salim got the ladder we'd used the other day and we put it down into the tunnel. I went down first, followed by Dr. Richards, and finally, Salim. We'd brought some lanterns with us to light up the cavern a little better than our phones had. The light seemed to shine off the smooth stone walls. When he got his first look at it, Dr. Richards had stared at it with a look of wonder on his face. He looked like he was setting his eyes upon the Holy Grail. I got the impression that he might not have fully believed in what we'd found up until then. But now that he was seeing it for himself, he absolutely believed. Dr. Richards spent the first few minutes looking over the painted paintings on the wall, filming it all with a handheld recorder and taking pictures. At one point, Salim asked him, "Do you know what this is?" Dr. Richards had looked back at him and told us that he wasn't entirely sure. The stonework, according to him, the stonework on the walls was somewhat consistent with the stonework done by some other cultures they'd found ruins of. Pre-Hadrian, I think he called it. Although the faded drawings seemed inconsistent with what he'd seen in other ruins, he said some other things, but I don't remember much about those. After a while, we offered to show him the large stone door we'd found, and Dr. Richards had enthusiastically told us to lead on. Salim had taken one of the lanterns and headed down the tunnel towards where we'd found the door. I expected it to be right there waiting for us, as immovable as ever. We hadn't brought anything to try and open the door. While Salim had seemed to want to know what was on the other side, I personally couldn't really have cared less. I figured that if Dr. Richards wanted to know so bad, he could open it himself. I sort of imagined he and his people would eventually dig out some way to access the tunnel without going through the hole in my basement, and I could fill it up without it affecting his work. This time, though, when we reached the door, we found it open. Not thrown wide open. Only one of the stone doors had been moved and pushed to the side just enough for something or someone to slip through. But it hadn't been like that when we left, and as Dr. Richards enthused over the stonework, Salim and I could only stare on uneasily. We both knew that something was very, very wrong. I mentioned to Dr. Richards that the door had been closed when last night we'd been down there, although he did seem that bothered by it. Honestly, I don't think he believed us, or thought we were just trying to screw with him. I watched as he grabbed the door and started to push it, nudging it open a little more. He got to budge more than Salim and I had, and with a little bit of effort, he got one of the doors open wide enough for all three of us to walk through. He went in first, and after a moment, Salim followed him. I hung back. I hadn't cared what was in there before, and now I wasn't so sure I wanted to know. But they were already in there, and it didn't take long for that curiosity to get to me. I held up one of the lanterns, and I followed Dr. Richards and Salim inside. I'm not really sure what I was expecting. But I sure as hell wasn't expecting a tomb. I liked the tunnel inside. This area didn't seem as though it had quite the same attention put into its construction. If anything, it looked more like what I expected to find down here, a stone cave with jutting stalagmites and stalactites, and what looked to be dozens of chambers splitting off from the entrance. My shoes kicked against the scattered bones as soon as I stepped inside. Oh no! Looking down, I could see the floor was absolutely covered in them. Some of them were probably just animal bones. Some of them. But a lot of them very clearly weren't. I could see a broken human skull just a few feet away from me. And up ahead, by where Salim was standing, I could see a mostly complete human skeleton. These bodies had to be ancient. The bones were little more than just dust. But that didn't unsettle me any less. It wasn't just the skeletons of the dead either. Looking up along the walls, I could see other bodies. I was sure they'd once been human. Although their skin was dried out, it barely resembled skin. Imagine finding this shit in your basement. The faces were still clearly visible, and I could even make out the individual features on most of them. Between the sunken empty eyes and jutting teeth, some of them still had lips and noses. Some had faces that were little more than just skulls. But there was one thing all of them had in common. All of them looked like they'd been screaming. One of the mummified bodies was huddled up into a corner, hands over its face. Another was propped up against the wall, mouth open and possibly wide. You could see the eyelids squeeze shut as they screamed. I looked ahead at Salim. The color had completely drained from his face. I could see him staring at one of the mummified bodies, looking as though he was ready to vomit. Fascinating, I could hear Dr. Richards saying. That was one word for it. As before, he filmed and documented everything, looking like a kid in a candy shop. Meanwhile, I could barely stand the sight of what I was looking at. It turned my stomach. I couldn't stay. I only made it a few feet into the tomb when I turned back. Dr. Richards had been exploring one of the side passages when I left. I could hear Salim approaching me from behind, coming to check on me. I told him that I was going to head back up. He said that he'd get Dr. Richards and we could all go together. I watched him dip back into the cave and just looked away from it, staring down the tunnel. I could see the distant light from the hole in the ceiling up ahead. It wasn't that far away, just a couple minutes and I'd be home again, and I never had to go back down again. If Dr. Richards wanted to explore this nightmare, then he was more than welcome to. As I started down the tunnel, I could have sworn I saw something staring back at me. It was hard to tell in the low light, but I could have sworn I saw a face looking at me from the darkness. Near one of the walls, it might have been a human face. Maybe? Although it looked a little too gaunt and too red. I blinked and squinted to try and get a better look, but when I tried to focus on it, it was gone. I looked back towards the door to the cavern to call out to Salim to hurry it up, and as I did, I heard the ladder we'd set at the mouth of the cave fall. When I looked back, it was lying on the ground. I stared at it for a moment. There was no way that ladder should have fallen over. It had the room to fall over. Almost on cue, Salim and Dr. Richards emerged from the cave. They both saw what I saw, the ladder lying on the ground. Lantern in hand, I headed over towards it. Salim and I took a minute to get it back up. I climbed out first. Looking around my basement, I didn't immediately see anything out of place. I wondered for a moment if something had just run into the ladder and knocked it over. I mean, there had been something living down there, right? I stopped to help Salim and Dr. Richards out. Oh, behind me before we went upstairs again. And as we stepped into the kitchen, that's when I saw the blood. I remember the way my heart began to race in my chest as my blood ran a cold, dark, red blood stained the white tile floor. I remember calling out to Justine, then calling out for Darius. No answer. Salim was calling for his own wife. He called for his kids. I'd never seen such a look of dread in his eyes. Behind us, Dr. Richards was silent. A look of horror mounting on his face. The three of us tore through the house. It did take us long to find the bodies. Most of them were in the hall, leading to the front door. Justine, Darius, Salim's wife, his children. Oh God. The blood, the state of their bodies, I can't get it out of my head. And the looks on their faces. I'll never forget the looks on their faces. All of them had the same one, a silent, eternal scream of terror. The last thing they'd felt as their killer had come for them. Beyond the bodies, the front door hung open. You could see bloody footprints leading outside. But whatever it went after, but wherever it went after that, I don't know. The only thing I know for certain is that whatever was trapped down in there in those caverns wasn't supposed to get out. Dun dun dun! Terrifying. Spooky. We got a supernatural monster on the loose, folks! Related, unrelated, I will be right back. Cats are screaming. I'm gonna check what's going on. I muted the wrong thing, and so I did not unmute. But yes, hello, Spooky, and yes, don't go check on the noise. It's okay. You're right. As soon as I was like, I left, I'm like, I'm gonna think something horrible's happened to me. That was not part of the act. I could hear the kids. I could hear the cats in the litter box, and then I heard, and then so I went to look, and yeah, no worries. TMI, someone's business didn't quite land all the way in the litter box, and they were like, Mom, fix it. Hi, Spooky, but yes, we have Deaky emotes now. Coincidentally, I just got them like 8 hours ago, and I was like, oh, perfect. Halloween treat instead of candy. And hi, Ranger! Welcome back. Alright. Let's see here. I definitely have more just as sweet as candy. Ah, perfect, right? Alright, let me edit my list. Do, 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 do. There we go. How many stories did you miss? I think just one. You were here for Helena Malibu, I think. We just read one called There's Something in the Sinkhole Under My House. So I think you only missed one. Most of these stories take about 30-ish minutes to read, so. Let's see. Do I have... Da, 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 da. Alright. What about this one? Perfect. Okay, I have two that are technically about security guards. We will go with those, and those might be the last two we do. We'll see, because we're getting close to 9 p.m., and so usually we stop at 10, so we'll see Five Nights at Freddy's time. Pretty much, yeah. It's always the security guards that get stuck in these situations. But I mean, hey, anything I don't read, I can always keep on a list, and maybe next year I'll do another one. I'll do another reading stream for spooky stories, because this is fun. Okay. So this one is, I'm a lab security guard, and one of the technicians has done something unforgivable. I can imagine how this goes. I feel like this is like Isomnium all over again. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna get sued over this, and right now, I really don't care anymore. The shit I've seen by now is so fucked up that most of you people aren't going to believe me. But this needs to get out, no matter what the cost. I worked, for a very big research company, and no, I'm not a scientist. I'm a security guard. Honestly, I'm barely above minimum wage, and I had to sign a fuckload of NDAs, even though for the most part, I have no idea what's going on in the company I work for. I only know they were into pharmaceuticals, researching new drugs and cures and all that, and hey, that's pretty neat. They were trying to save the world. A lot of respect for that. My job was to guard the door. Anyone comes in, they need to have a valid badge that gets cleared by me. I've never had a problem with it. And very few people have given me any trouble. In hindsight, the first inkling I got over what was going on was when I heard a few of the eggheads chattering as they left the lab for lunch one afternoon. I caught a few snippets of conversation like returning cognitive function and reversible brain death, which all sounded pretty cool. Please do not bring back the dead. No necromancy, thank you. I mean, I read somewhere that someone else returned brain function to a dead pig, and I got to wondering if those folks were doing something similar. I mean, that would be pretty cool, right? I got to think about the wonders of modern science and dazzle at what the future held for medical advancements for a little bit, provided a bunch of middle-aged suburban moms did get in the way. That was a good feeling. I didn't hear much about whatever project they were working on after that. I mean, that's fine. The eggheads were supposed to keep work at work and not let it out. Can't have the competition hearing about it or have things leaking. I mostly forgot about that snippet of conversation and went back to spending my days checking badges and scrolling social media when I wasn't busy. Then came Brian. Brian Mendelsohn. Now there's a name. And I had never talked much. He was a mid-tier level employee who had a weekday shift that ended at 7. He was portly, balding, and kind of resembled the sick love child between Matthew Broderick and Danny DeVito. Now there is an image. He'd been working at the lab for as long as I'd been there, so I didn't think much of him. It was just another passing face that I never spoke to. He sure as hell never acted suspicious. When he left one night, a little early, with a stiffer posture than I remembered, in a briefcase I don't remember seeing him with before. I didn't think too much of it. I noticed that was my job after all. But I didn't say anything to him. He looked at me expectantly as he got halfway to the parking lot, and I awkwardly waved at him. Brian awkwardly waved back before he got into his car and drove off. The next morning, I got called into the office to get screamed at by my boss. Someone had stolen some samples from one of the labs. There was no evidence of a break-in, so the conclusion was that it had to be one of the people with clearance. A good old-fashioned case of industrial espionage. Well, there was only one guy I could think of who had been acting suspicious, and that was Brian. I told him that too. I don't know what happened next. I know they looked into him, but they didn't find anything. I wasn't fired, since there was no proof the theft happened on my watch, or that the thief had been easily visible. I was, however, told to inspect all bags upon exit, to ensure no one was smuggling anything out. Yay! I targeted Brian first, of course. He'd been the obvious suspect, so naturally I wanted to make sure he wasn't pulling some kind of con. Stealing samples and selling them for a bit of side money. Over the next week, though, nothing happened. And no one tried anything, and I went back to my usual life. I watched the news on my phone in between browsing Reddit, and I remember there being some controversy over a local funeral home misplacing the body of a college student who'd hung herself. Damn shame, she'd been a beauty too. A cute girl by the name of Taylor Jones. Probably a little too young for me, but still cute. Always a shame when a cute girl dies. Dubious security guard, alright. I think this is what they call an unreliable narrator. Brian avoided eye contact as I checked his bag a few nights later. He seemed distracted and kept looking at his phone. He'd emptied out his pockets for me as instructed, and I didn't really find anything out of the ordinary. And he didn't speak either. "Alright, you have a nice night," I said, nodding at him. He nodded back. I left abruptly. Sure enough, the next morning, there was another break-in. A vial of something had been stolen, and I had proof I checked everyone's bags. The security camera footage showed me doing so. So as pissed off as the head honchos were, there wasn't jack shit they could do about it. I was doing my job, and they knew it. Even if I wasn't in trouble, I was a little concerned about how someone had managed to sneak past me. I mean, sure, there were ways to do it. Brian could have taped the vial to his body, under his clothes. He could have put it under his mouth or up his ass. Like I said, I do recall him not speaking at all to me, and I just chalked it up as just plain rudeness. I say Brian, because I had a sneaking suspicion that it was him behind all this. Just a feeling in my gut. I could prove it, but he'd seemed so much shiftier lately. This set up a whole string of debates about just how far they could search employees to see if they were hiding anything. Did we really need to go so far as to do a cavity search on our own employees? Was that really actually necessary? I got to think about it, and I really didn't want to go that far. Plus, the more I stewed on it, the more pissed off I got. Here I was, working my ass off for barely minimum wage, and some asshole already making more than I would ever make was stealing their own work and to sell and make even more money. Now that just pissed me off, and it got me really thinking, what was Brian even up to, assuming it was him? He hadn't stopped acting suspicious. He always seemed to leave early and hurry to his car after work. Couldn't have acted more guilty if he tried. I got it into my mind to do my own little investigation. I took a night off, and when quitting time came, I waited in my car down the street for Brian to leave work. Sure enough, a minute or so before 7, Brian's car pulled out of the lot and he started driving. I followed at enough of a distance so he wouldn't get suspicious. I didn't want to spook him. Brian drove until he was well out of town, and I started to wonder if I was just following him home. I mean, this was a gross invasion of privacy, and I was starting to have doubts. He eventually got off the highway and pulled into our motel a good hour away from where we worked. Jesus, did he live here? I parked on the street and watched from a distance as he got out of his car and went to talk to the motel clerk. Through the window, I saw the clerk give him a key and smile at him. It didn't look like Brian paid anything. Brian walked out of the office and to a nearby motel door, where he went inside and closed it behind him. Can I just watch this guy go to a booty call? I left and stewed on it for a day or so. Brian's behavior hadn't really changed at all over the next few days. On my next day off, I followed him to the motel again. This time, after he was in his room, I opted to go into the office and have a chat with the clerk. The guy behind the desk was a Weasley-looking bastard with a toque who stank of cigarette smoke. Ah, yes! Canadian. Basically a beanie. We're full up, he said gruffly. Nothing at all, huh? I said we're full. Sorry. You're gonna have to go elsewhere. He didn't stand up. He just watched me, waiting for me to leave, and I did really try to engage the guy in any further conversation. I didn't leave just yet, though. I walked past the rooms, listening closely. There wasn't much sound. It was quiet. No voices, no TV. Nothing. I stopped by one of the darkened motel room windows and peered inside cautiously. This looked empty, even though the clerk said they were full. Come to think of it, I hadn't seen any cars outside save for Brian's and 2 others. The motel looked like it had way more capacity than that. I had an idea. Then I saw some movement in the bedroom. Someone was walking around in there. Housekeeping, I said and knocked on the door. I said it in my best customer service voice. No response. Frowning, I tried the door. Locked. I tried something else. Bro! Now, I know that my job is technically security, but I did have the best upbringing. I may or may not have been a wild child, and doing that taught me a number of things, including how to pick a lock. The door came open easily once I picked it, and when I looked inside, I could see the figure of a person standing in the darkness. Oh! Shit, sorry. I didn't know anyone was in there, I said. Still no sound. Hello? Oh, this is weird. I searched for the light switch and turned it on. The woman standing in the room was blonde, beautiful and naked as the day she was born. She stared at me with a vacant expression, and I slowly drew closer to her. Oh, shit. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were. She just stood there, not trying to hide herself. It was like there was no one even home. She just stood there. Ma'am? I took a step closer, and I studied her face, and I realized I knew her from somewhere. Looking closer, the bruises on her neck helped click it all into place. This was the girl I'd seen on the news, the one who'd hung herself, the one whose body had gone missing. Taylor Jones. For the longest time, I just stared. I mean, what the hell else was I going to do? I tried to reason away what I was seeing. I mean, there's gotta be tons of cute blonde tricks around, right? Especially ones with ligature marks who stand naked in motel rooms in the dark and don't move. I had to get her out of there. I mean, she was clearly drugged up or something, right? Damn. I took her by the hand, and she went along with me, with absolutely no resistance. I caught a glimpse of the bed and saw an open box of condoms on the table beside her. Oh, God. It turned my stomach to imagine what they were doing in here. I just made it through the door when someone clotheslined me with a baseball bat. I hit the ground hard, and without anything even remotely resembling dignity. My ears were ringing, and I saw stars. Now, you gotta pay for that. I recognized the hostile drawl of the motel clerk as I writhed on the ground. I saw him gently push Taylor back into the room before he stepped in as well. He grabbed me by the back of my shirt and dragged me into the room with him. Now, this is an unfortunate predicament wherein the clerk said he guided Taylor towards a nearby chair and made her sit. What the hell did you do to her? I murmured. Do to her? Not a damn thing. If anything, she did it to herself. You faked her death and brought her here? I replied. I saw her on the news. Faked it? I think you've got it all wrong. I got to my knees and looked over at Taylor in the chair. She didn't move. She didn't react to us at all. The door opened, and I saw Brian come in. His shirt was untucked, and the concern on his face grew when he saw me. What the hell? You know him? The clerk asked, pointing the baseball bat at me. Yeah, he's the security guard at the lab. Jeb, how'd he get here? Got him poking around the room, the clerk, Jeb, replied. Looks like you found our hanging girl here. Jesus, I knew you shouldn't have gotten her. She was too high profile, Brian swore under his breath. Never once taken his eyes off me. Great. Jesus. Hey, you didn't have any complaints when you were plucking her a couple days ago, Jeb snapped, and this whole operation was your idea, so don't you dare shift the blame onto me. Well, you're the one choosing the girl. Gee, what the hell kind of scam is going on here? What the hell did you two do to this girl? We didn't do anything. I mean, we didn't kill her at least. She was already dead. The look on my face made it clear that I had no idea what he was talking about, so Brian elaborated. Because, the evil people do like to expound on their shit. I assume you came because you were looking for the missing vials, or at least you were wondering if I was selling them or something, right? I did answer, and he did bother waiting for me to. I don't suppose you know what was in those vials, do you? You probably don't even know what we do in that lab. Nothing as fucked up as this, I replied. Brian grimaced. We developed a mixture of chemicals that can stimulate a dead brain. Restart a body, as it were. In effect, we can bring people back to life by simply giving them a little needle right behind the eye. They're a little wary about doing human trials at the lab just yet, so I asked Jeb here if he'd let me experiment. I needed to see if it worked. Why? So you could F him? I asked. Brian pursed his lips. That wasn't the original plan. You're just a fucked up, gross weirdo, alright? The subjects regain low-level cognitive function, but they lose just about all their higher brain functions. They're alive, but they're basically vegetables. I didn't really have much to do with my first few subjects, and Jeb's business mostly consists of prostitutes, so, we made a little arrangement providing some in-house services, as it were. I provided him bodies, and he split the income with me. I stared at him in horror. You've been pimping out dead girls? Why the hell not? Jeb asked. Jesus. This even works, Brian insisted. Even if we did get a little sidetracked, you're insane. You're both insane. Was the only thing I could think to say, and Brian just sighed. And you're the result of my carelessness. Don't make too much of a mess. I'm sure we can frame it as a car accident or something. This is how zombies will happen. This is how zombies will happen. Absolutely. I wondered if he was expecting me to die easily, but I had no intention of going out like that. Mall cop ain't just a mall cop. He hit me again with the bat, and I went down, all part of the plan. I kicked him in the knee as hard as I could, and I heard it crack. Jeb went down, and I saw the bat slip out of his hands. You broke his knee with a single kick. Incredible. Brian went for the bat, so did I. He made it there first since he was walking and I was crawling. He raised it above his head as I hurried towards him. Getting on my feet again, I tackled him before he could hit me and slammed him into the wall of the motel. I tried to rip the bat from him. Jeb was on his feet again and grabbed me from behind, struggling to pull me off Brian. The The bat weakly bopped against my head, and I slammed my head backwards to hit Jeb in the face. I could feel his nose crunch. I resumed my attack on Brian, punching him in the face over and over again. I felt his glasses break beneath my fist, and Jeb again tried to pull me off. This time he succeeded, but not before I ripped the bat away from Brian. Jeb pushed me away, and his eyes widened when he saw I had the bat. I swung it at his face as hard as I could. He went down, and I kept swimming until I was sure he wasn't ever going to get back up. Okay, that's overkill. This is no longer justified self-defense. This is murder. His corpse twitched on the floor, and I could see Brian watching from the corner of my eye. Jesus. He blindly scrambled towards the door, hoping to escape, but I was faster. I seized him by the coat and threw him to the ground. I didn't care. I raised the bat, and I didn't stop hitting him until his head was nothing but a thick red paste. Oh my god. Covered in blood and exhausted, I sat down on the bed, panting heavily. I finally looked at Taylor. She'd sat there through the violence, never once moving. She didn't even react to the corpses, and honestly, I was fine. I stared at her sadly, and after resting, I decided to look in the other rooms. There were 17 girls in that motel, including Taylor. I didn't recognize all of them, but I was pretty sure they all didn't die by suicide. 17 girls Brian had brought back to life just so Jeb could run his little brothel. How many had he murdered? That was the question at the forefront of my mind. All of them? Most of them? The only one who could give me the answer was dead, and there was no way to bring him back, even with the serum. There wasn't a brain left to revive. Not that I would have even if I wanted to. I burned the motel to the ground, and I made sure all the girls were right there in the middle of the fire when I did it. Better that they just die again than whatever else would have happened to them. If I called the lab and told them what happened, I don't know for sure they'd let those girls just stay dead. And after Brian, I didn't want to risk trusting them again. I'm signing off now, and then I'm probably gonna get sued, but I really don't care. Whatever those people in the lab are working on, it's not worth it. No matter what they do with it, there will always be more Brians and Jeb to exploit it. And I'll be damned if I ever let that happen again. Whoa! That one was like a what? Bananas. Yes, this is how zombies will happen. This is how zombies will happen. Nothing good's gonna happen there. Nope, 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 nope. He went GTA on their ass. Well deserved, I think. Well deserved. Whoosh. Now let me just scan through this next one. I should have read that one a little before doing it. I mean, it's not that it's bad, but like whoosh. All right. Okay, this is another one by Head of Spectre. I already read through this one, so I promise you, even though there's a cat as a main character in this, nothing happens to the cat. Very important. As far as I could tell from skimming, nothing happened to the cat. So this is, I put a camera on my cat. What I saw on the footage haunts me. Ever since my wife Adeline disappeared, it's just been me and Charlie, all alone. I don't mind it. I've never much cared for company. If I wanted visitors, I wouldn't have tried to get as far away from civilization as I could now, would I? Charlie's pit stops back at the house for food, sleep, and to deposit the presents he sometimes brings back are enough for me. In the meanwhile, I occupy my time with books and occasional television. Adeline left behind more than her fair share of the former. She had a thing for mystery novels. I never used to take any interest in them, but nowadays, well, I suppose reading the ones I knew she enjoyed lets me feel close to her again. My daughter says I'm going crazy up here. I tell her that I've never been happier. I don't want to go back to the city and rot away in some old folks' home with a condescending nurse talking to me like I'm a child. I'm 85 and I'm as sharp as I ever was, damn. Got a lot of fire for an 85-year-old. Not quite as spry, no, but if anything really needs fixing, I have a telephone, and I have the internet. I can call for help if I need it. I intend to live out my days here in this house with the woods stretching endlessly on behind me. I'll breathe fresh air, relax in solitude, and wait for the Lord to tell me that my time is done. Until then, I will do all I can to enjoy the time I have left on my terms. Of course, that said, my daughter Sarah still worries after me more than she ought to. I suppose I should find it sweet, but really it's a little annoying. I love her dearly, and I'm glad we raised her right, yada yada yada, but when I'm trying to read, I don't need her knocking on my door to fuss over me. I'm sitting in my chair on the porch. I have coffee and a sandwich. I'm not going anywhere, and even if I was, I'm hardly feeble. Regardless, she insists that I need company. I gave up fighting her on that. I figure she's doing it more for her own peace of mind than anything else. I was never there for my father in his twilight years. He and I weren't on speaking terms after he passed. Well, I suppose I'd wished one of us had had the balls to say one last nice thing, and I suppose I wish it had been me. Besides, sometimes she brings me gifts. Not quite as fancy as the one Charlie sometimes brings, but fancy in their own way. Cameras to monitor the outside, so I can see who's coming from my tablet computer, and I suppose the tablet computer herself. I've adapted well enough to it all, I suppose. I'd like to think I've done so better than most my age, and if I'm being honest, I like how easy the technology has made some things. Even if they were things I didn't really ask for in the first place. The other day, Sarah asked me if Charlie's lone absences bothered me. I told her they didn't. Charlie had always been an outdoor cat. He's as much a creature of the forest as the birds and the squirrels. Adeline used to worry about him since there's coyotes and bears out there, but I don't. I reckon that if Charlie's made it this long without running into trouble, he knows what he's doing, and judging by the things he's brought back home, I got the impression he wasn't exactly in danger. It wasn't often, but every now and then, when Charlie came back, he'd have some sort of trinket with him. Sometimes it was just junk, bottle caps, pieces of old cans and whatnot. Sometimes he'd have coins, usually just small change, but every now and then he'd have something a little more valuable, jewelry and whatnot. Some of it was fake. A few pieces looked real. I always kept the real-looking ones in a drawer in case anyone ever came looking for them. It didn't seem right to sell them. I figured they'd probably been dropped somewhere in the woods by hikers and Charlie had found them. Either that or he was raiding some kind of garbage pile. It was hard to say for sure. Regardless, I got the vibe he was staying out of trouble. Some cats are dumb. Charlie isn't. I've got more faith in that cat than I had in most people. Still, Sarah had her questions to ask. You don't wonder where he's going at all? She asked. I got the impression that she asked more out of genuine curiosity than anything else, and that told me she was trying to work her way up towards some kind of point. What that cat does is his business, I said. And you're not the least bit curious, huh? Alright, what did you buy? The sales pitch was getting a little annoying. And Sarah just smiled sheepishly. Okay, well, I just thought it might be fun, you know? But they've got these cameras. People wear them for biking and stuff. You can attach them right to your body. Isn't that neat? I suppose. I didn't really see the point to it, but I was playing along. It might be cool. It'll give you something to look at when he gets back. Truth be told, I thought the whole thing was stupid, but she got my attention, I suppose. Something in my gut told me this was the sort of question that was going to keep me up. Besides, Sarah seemed pretty interested in it, and as much as my daughter can annoy me sometimes, I never once been able to say no to my little girl, and I wasn't about to start now that she'd hit 50. I suppose, I repeated, Charlie put up with these ridiculous sweaters your mother always put on him around Christmas time. He'll probably tolerate this too, and I don't imagine it'll do him any harm. It won't, trust me, this will be fun, I promise. I could hear the years melting away in her voice, and beneath the lines of age and gray at her temples, I could see the same 2-year-old I not so begrudgingly sat and had imaginary tea with once upon a time. She split into a full grin and reached into her purse to take out the camera, which looked like a small gray box. She'd even bought a harness. The kids are going to love this too. They always ask about you and Charlie, you know? Oh, I'm sure they do, I replied. The kids must have been at least pushing 20 by now. I doubt they'd spared much of a thought towards what I was up to. But it was nice of her to lie to me, I guess. Looking at that harness and camera, the first thing that came to mind is Charlie is not going to be happy about this. But I kept that thought to myself, aside from moderately annoying the poor cat a little bit. The whole idea seemed harmless enough, besides maybe we'd actually see something interesting when we looked back at the footage. Sarah, of course, showed me how to set everything up. She showed me how to access the video by myself. And I'd say I got the hang of it moderately quickly. I knew the steps, at least, and if I got stuck, I could always call her. Then after chatting for a while longer, she went home and let me return to my solitude. Charlie hadn't come back home yet, although he usually didn't show up until sundown. So I set everything aside and sat down to read a book. At some point, I fell asleep in my chair. When I woke up, it was dawn, and I could see Charlie sitting on the banister of the porch, right outside the window, so I know he was there when I woke up. As soon as he saw me moving, he started meowing and pacing around. I picked myself up, stretched, and shuffled over to the door to let him in. He scurried indoors and went straight for the food bowl as he did, and I noticed that he'd left me something on the deck. It gleamed brightly in the morning sun, and I slowly bent down to pick it up. It was a necklace. Judging by the tarnish on it, it was real silver. The chain looked broken, but the chime looked all right. It depicted a little heart. Nothing fancy, but it was something good for a lady, I suppose. No engravings on it. No sign of who it belonged to. It was likely that nobody would come looking for this. But I still took it to the sink to wash it off before I put it in the drawer with the rest. The drawer rattled with old rings, necklaces, earrings, and rare coins that Charlie had brought me over the years. The old cat himself was going to town on his dry food bowl as if he'd never seen food before in his life. I honestly felt a little bad for him and hoped he hadn't been waiting too long. I went to fetch some wet food for him, partially as an apology, partially because I knew he'd start to get mouthy with me if I didn't give him a proper breakfast. I was too tired to listen to that old man bitch. Charlie's a good cat, despite his attitude. He's a gray Maine Coon with a mean face. Ah, yes, big cat. Big cat, then. Though he always melted like butter in Adeline's hands. She was always inclined to baby him, but I always saw him as a fellow curmudgeon to pass the days with. I never actually told anyone this, but I imagined he'd have a bit of a southern drawl if he could talk, and that he sounded a little bit like John Wayne. As soon as he'd heard me opening the wet food, he was right at my ankles expectantly, meowing and demanding his breakfast. I figured it wasn't wise to keep him waiting. I set the bowl down on the kitchen floor and set the bowl down on the kitchen table and let him jump up to eat his fill while I started on my own breakfast. Charlie had a nap while I ate, sleeping in the armchair Adeline had once liked to sit in. It didn't bother him until around noon, when I remembered the camera that Sarah had bought. I'd left it in the living room, and while I hadn't put too much thought into putting it on Charlie, the memory of the necklace I'd found this morning had got me thinking, where was my old friend getting all that junk? Was he finding it? Stealing it? What? I suppose the camera was likely to answer that. Sarah had already piqued my curiosity as to where he went. But that posed a question that required a more immediate answer. Charlie was out cold, with that contented look cats have when they sleep, and he paid me no mind as I got up to fetch the camera. I read over the instructions again and played with it a bit before I actually tried to set it up. I recorded a little snippet of footage of Charlie napping there on the couch and popped that into my computer to review. The quality of the camera seemed fairly nice. It was easy enough to access the files. Might as well go and make sure the harness fit. Charlie only gave me some slight protest when I bothered him to put the harness on. I committed the sin of awakening him, although he gave me a pass despite being grumpy. "Don't wake up, sleeping cats!" Charlie only... "Sorry, old-timer," I said before scratching him under his chin. I fastened the harness around him, then fitted the camera onto the chest. "Guess I'll be along for your next adventure, huh?" He just chirped at me and stiffed my fingers, then flopped back down to continue his rest. He didn't stay that way for long. Within the next 10 minutes or so, he was at the back door, stretching and pacing, ready to set out on the road again. I checked to make sure his camera was on before setting him loose. "Happy trails, Pilgrim," I said under my breath as he scampered outside and bounded down the stairs. He stopped to look back at me briefly before he took off into the forest, and I knew I probably wouldn't see him again until nightfall. Normally, I'd be in bed by 9, considering I was up so early, but thinking about Charlie and what I'd find on his camera kept me up, and I couldn't help but feel the house was a little too quiet for a change. I put the TV on to try and distract myself, since the reading hadn't quite done the trick. I poured myself a hard drink as well. No harm in that, I figured. It'd been a while since I had indulged. Not since Adeline's funeral. We'd buried an empty casket. There hadn't been a body. After 2 months of looking, there wasn't much point in pretending as if she was ever coming back. My mind stayed sharp over the years. Adeline wasn't quite as lucky. Dementia ran in her family. We'd seen it happen to her mother. A slow, cruel decline. We'd both feared for years that would happen to her too. Then, when we started seeing the signs, neither of us acknowledged it, even when they became too large to ignore. Sarah was over constantly back then, doing what she could to help out. Adeline was a strong-willed woman up until the end, though. Sarah suggested retirement homes neither of us wanted to go to. She wasn't feeble. She and I had taken care of ourselves. We'd kept her health into our old age. We even went on walks through the trails out behind the house. Going into some home where they'd infantilize her, treat her as if she was less of a person just because she was old and sick. Take her out of the house she'd known for years. I couldn't do that to her. I didn't want to watch her go through that, and I would have been damned if I let her go through it without me. No, she was my wife, in sickness and health until death do us part. Those were the vows, and I would honor them until death. Death. When I was a young man in my 20s and looking to propose, the prospect of growing old together terrified me. I wouldn't give back the memories we made together, not for anything, but back then, the idea of one day losing her, or of knowing the pain she might feel if she lost me, that thought would creep into the back of my mind. I'd always banish it, dismissing it as something to worry about in the future. Then, one morning, I woke up to find the spot in bed beside me empty when I never saw her again. Then I had to accept that eventually had come. The police suggested that she'd gone on a hike alone. She'd done that before when we were younger. I did argue with them. I imagine that's just what she did. She woke up, forgotten the years that had passed, looked out in the crisp morning air, and decided to enjoy it. She walked out, and she never came back in. Maybe she'd forgotten the trail, got turned around, and wandered deeper into the woods. Maybe she'd fallen, hurt herself, and never been found. Whatever ending had befallen her, I preferred not to think about it. It was better that I didn't know, even if not knowing was the cruelest thing in the world. Sarah was there for me, of course. I suppose it's why she doted on me so much in the year or so since. I wonder if deep down she fears that one day I'll follow Adeline into those woods, and she'll never see me again either. The scotch sat in my hand as I stared blankly at the TV. not really watching the infomercials on the screen. A flash of movement from the corner of my eye drew my attention and tore me away from my thoughts. Charlie paced on the back porch, the camera harness on him looking unarmed. I set my glass down and stood up to let him in. "Have a nice adventure, old-timer?" I asked. He just went straight for his food bowl. Dinner time. I let him gorge himself on dry food while I got a tin of wet food for him. That got his attention, and he hopped up on the kitchen table to await his feast. "You're a spoiled cat, aren't you?" I asked. I bet if he could have responded, he would have said something like, "You bet your ass, Pilgrim." As he ate, I took the camera off his chest and undid the harness. He seemed happy to have it off. The camera was a little dirtier and had stopped recording some time ago. I vaguely recall Sarah said something about the camera not having a hell of a lot of battery life. A couple of hours or something like that. I probably wouldn't have gotten the full adventure, but that was fine. I doubt I have missed anything that interesting. I was tired and wanted to sleep, but the camera called to me. I can't quite explain the sense of urgency I felt about looking at that footage. Maybe I was bored with my routine. Maybe I was more bored with my routine than I thought, and at the very least, the footage might be somewhat interesting. I gave Charlie a pat on the head before deciding a cup of tea might give me the boost I need to go through that footage. When all was said and done, Charlie had gotten comfortable in his favorite chair, and I'd retired with my hot tea to the office. I plugged the camera into my computer and took a sip of my drink. There were only a couple of videos stored on the camera. I recognized a few as test videos I'd taken by the thumbnails. The last one, though, it must have taken its thumbnail from a random point in the video. It looked almost pitch black, as if something were obscuring the camera. I frowned at the sight of it and hoped like hell the file wasn't messed up somehow. I'd have needed to call Sarah if it was. And who knew when she could make it out to see me? I clicked the video anyway, just to see what happened. I did expect it to start, but it did. I could see part of Charlie's head and my own jean-clad legs as I turned the camera on. I remembered this. This was just before I let him out. "Happy trails, Pilgrim," I heard myself say before the back door opened, and Charlie was set loose upon the woods. What followed was some rather neat-looking footage as Charlie skulked around some bushes and tall grass. But I can't really say it was all that interesting. He climbed some falling branches and made his way into one of the neighbors' yards. He watched them for a little while and even ate some treats they'd left out for him. Lil glutted. Then he went back off into the woods. I'm sure at one point I saw him pass the hiking trail that Adeline and I used to walk. I recognized the little creek that he walked along as he moved deeper into the forest. There was a familiar rustle of grass and water as he walked. Although the sound quickly became annoying, so I lowered the volume. I couldn't help but wonder just where the hell he was going out there. But I imagine he was probably just hunting. Maybe he'd kill a mouse or something. The canopy above him seemed to grow a few shades darker as he climbed up onto a fallen birch tree. The loose bark crinkled under his paws. The tree seemed to lead up to another, taller tree. The canopy above was thick enough that it almost seemed like nighttime, despite it still being fairly early in the day. Looking at the timestamp of the video, he'd only been out for an hour and a bit. He moved along the branch of the taller tree, walking as if he knew where he was going. I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of something ahead of him. At a glance, it looked a bit like a bird's nest, although it seemed rather large. That said, I knew some birds liked large nests. The longer I watched, the more glimpses I caught of the thing. It was definitely a nest of some sort. Twigs and leaves had been deliberately put together to form something. Although this was bigger than any bird's nest I'd seen before. It seemed to completely dominate the top of one tree, and Charlie kept climbing as if he hadn't quite reached the top yet. Hell, I couldn't even see the size of this thing. It seemed less like a nest and more like a wall of branches that seemed too big and too thick for a regular bird to lift. After a while, one of the branches that Charlie had climbed seemed to turn towards the nest. Getting closer, I could have sworn I saw bits of rope holding some of the larger sticks, or perhaps I would be more apt to call the branches together. didn't get that good of a look, though. Charlie seemed to weave his way through a gap in the nest, creeping in as if he owned the place. The inside seemed pitch black. Charlie moved slowly, carefully choosing each step as he drew closer. It was over a minute until there was any light again. Long enough to make me check and see if the video had ended, but there was still about half an hour left. At last, he seemed to emerge onto the other side of whatever the hell he just passed through. The light inside the nest was scarce. The interior was scattered with large black feathers, and I could see the sunlight glinting off bits of shiny things. Tin cans, children's toys, pocket watches, hood ornaments, jewelry. Was this where he was getting all that? What the hell was this? Some kind of massive crow's nest? I was hardly an expert on crows, but I couldn't imagine they'd ever make a nest that large. Charlie paused, as if looking or listening for something, before he continued. He paused to sniff a few pieces of discarded junk before casually making his way over to the far side of the nest. As he walked, I noticed the shape of things that didn't quite look like branches or sticks. They were brownish in color and seemed to blend in easily, but the shape of them was all wrong. Branches don't have those smooth edges. Branches don't curve inward on themselves. And branches don't have eye sockets. I could see the skulls of some sort of animal, a large rodent of some kind, staring emptily from the interwoven branches. I could see bones with smaller twigs wrapped around them, used almost as additional support for the structure of the nest. And as Charlie walked, I saw something that made my heart begin to beat faster as a sick sensation filled my stomach. I'd seen human skulls on TV, but never in real life. Had it not been for that matted black hair that still clung to the scalp, I might have been able to dismiss the idea that it was anyone else. But I knew that hair. I kissed that head 1,000 times over a lifetime together. I remember the laughing eyes in those now empty sockets. Even in death, I recognized my Adeline. Or was left of my Adeline. How many of her bones had been added to the nest? Her body alone couldn't have been what became its foundation. How many others had been claimed as construction materials for this nest? Oh God. Oh dear God. Charlie sat reverently beside Adeline's skull, and I knew that he recognized her too. He'd almost certainly come there to mourn, to pay his respects, or simply be with her. Even if she was long gone, I could only pray that whatever had done this to her had only taken her after she died. But from the gashes in the bone, I fear that wasn't the case. But what could have done something like this? What could have taken her? What could have... Charlie had been sitting quietly for almost 10 minutes as I placed my hands to my mouth, stifling my own cries of grief. Then he moved, suddenly, as if something had startled him. From the speakers, I heard a raspy sound, an unhuman hiss that sounded like a cross between a sadistic cackle and the chattering of some large bird. Charlie scurried out of sight, moving between a gap in the branches of the nest before positioning himself to look back. Through the gaps in the branches and bones, I could see something else had entered the nest, and although I could not fully see what it was, all I could see was 2 scaled legs that each ended with a 4-toed claw, just like a bird of prey. It chittered and cackled as it approached the spot where Charlie had been, moving awkwardly as it hopped closer. I could see long black feathers trailing down the creature's body as it continued to chitter. It seemed to inspect the spot where Charlie had been, and I heard him hiss. Did it do much to deter the creature that was hunting for him, the creature that had likely killed my wife? I could hear the rustling of sticks, and the camera blurred as Charlie moved to crawl out of the nest. He moved through the gaps in the branches as if he'd done this 1,000 times. and found his way out onto a long branch that led down. Then he ran for freedom, and the very last shot I saw in that video was the blur of the ground beneath him. As the video ended, I couldn't help but to notice Charlie in the doorway of my office. His eyes were wide and alert. His ears were raised as if the sounds of whatever creature he had encountered had frightened him. With a shaking hand, I coaxed him over to me, and he jumped onto my desk. I'm not sure if he was there to protect me, or if he wanted me to protect him. Either way, I was glad to have his company. I pulled the old man into my lap to hold him tight, and it took a few minutes before he seemed to relax again. Lucky cat. I don't think I'll ever be able to relax again. I've rewatched the footage countless times by now. I haven't told anything. When she asked if I put the camera on Charlie yet, I told her I'd get around to it. She can never see what I've seen. She can never know what happened to her mother, never. But I'm not foolish enough to delete the footage. If ever proof is needed, it needs to be accessible to Sarah or to anyone else who may need it should I not return from the woods today. I haven't hunted in years, but I dusted off my old rifle from the garage. It still works fine, and I've got bullets. I don't know if I'm half the shot I used to be. It's one thing to hit a few tin cans out in the backyard. It's another thing to hit a moving target. But I'm sure I'll manage one way or the other. I'm sure I can follow the path Charlie took. Not exactly, but close enough. I'm sure that if I go out into the woods, I can find the nest. I can find whatever horrible thing lives there. And when I do, by God, I will kill it. For Adeline. For Adeline. Yay, big ass frickin' crows. Wah! That's, not great. Poor old man. Poor Adeline. Poor Charlie. Charlie misses his mom. Poor little guy. Stretch. Alright, it's 9:35. So I think that's good stopping point for story time anyway. We're gonna start running and do a bunch of stuff. Was long, but I like the build up. Oh yeah, that one was really good. I really liked it when I read it. So yeah, the most of the stuff I've been reading has been by the Redditor, Head of Spectre. If you want to try and find some of his stuff. Actually, I'm dumb. Hold on. I can just pop his thing in chat in case any of you would like to read some spookiness. He's written so, or I'm assuming it's a he anyway. They've written so much. They've got a whole directory of stuff. Like, they've got ongoing series, they've got standalone, flash fiction, mythos, multi-part stories, narration, playlists. Because some people have actually, from how I vaguely remember finding him, I was searching up another story, and then I found the YouTube video of someone did a narration of of one of his stories. And then I found, the original Reddit post and all that stuff. So here you go. Lots of really good stuff in there. I really enjoyed going through a lot of his stuff. Like I said, just even the standalone story list is huge. When you pop it open, there is, standalone stories. The list, it goes on and on and on and on. There's gotta be, at least 50, probably 100 short stories. and it was last revised 15 days ago. So they started writing all of this stuff like 4 years ago, and they're still going. The beauty of the internet. People sharing all of their stuff for free. We love it. We love it. But yes, enjoy their work if you want to check it out. Some of the other stuff, like I checked the creepypasta wiki. They have a whole bunch of stories on there as well. Like, literally, it's a wiki, but it's literally just entire posts of stories. There's lots of good stuff floating around out there. So yes, thank you guys for indulging me. I'm glad a whole bunch of you showed up just for me to read y'all posts on the internet. I had a lot of fun doing this. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to actually manage physically to read for 2 to 3 hours, but I did. Hooray! So, maybe it was a nice comfy night. We show up for you. Aww! It was a fun idea. I'm so glad. Good. Because I even thought about, like, reading Christmas stories. Like, if I do a stream on Christmas Eve or whatever. Because most of those are so old, they're in public domain now. I will consider. Stroke my chin, think it over. But for now, I think that is gonna be it for us. I appreciate the folks who showed up, especially those of y'all I know who's in the UK. Dee Dee reads Grandma got run over by a reindeer. Oh no, Grandma got ran over by a reindeer. One night Christmas Eve. You might say you don't believe it's Santa, but as for Grandpa and I, we believe. Goodbye, Halloween. Goodbye, Halloween. Gosh, it's November already. Gasp. Yeah. You guys are gonna have to say goodbye to the ghosts at the end of the video tomorrow. It's business as usual. Bow, bow! Alright, so for raiding, we haven't been able to raid Jemmy in so long, especially since she was in Japan and timing-wise, so Jemmy is playing Klonoa. So let's go hang out with Jemmy. Nice way to end spooky, scary skeleton night. Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Alrighty. So that's gonna be it for me. Tomorrow, we are doing usual gaming. We're going back to Final Fantasy V after gosh knows how long. So much stuff came out, I'm like, we need to get back to some of our continuing series. We're still pretty early in Final Fantasy V though, I think. So we will go back to 5 tomorrow. That'll be at 7 p.m. EST. Thank y'all for coming by, especially those of y'all I know who are in Europe. Because, like, it's one thing if, like, the folks from, like, the Philippines and Singapore and stuff come by. It's morning of November 1st for them. For y'all, I know it's deep in the middle of the night, so I appreciate y'all coming by. So for now, you're spooky. I stream an hour early this week. That's true. Europe already had daylight savings time and all that stuff. It doesn't hit for us until this weekend. But soon. Soon I'm gonna be waking up at 4 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. and be like, oh, I hate everything. I try and sleep in, but, like, you know, I tend to be a light sleeper, so sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, God. Alrighty, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow at 7 p.m. EST for more gaming. But for now, that's it for me. Thank y'all for stopping by for my inaugural reading stream. Very nice. I'm looking forward to doing more of this stuff in the future. So for now, that's gonna be it for me. We're gonna head off to Jemmy. Let's do DD raid, but since we've got new emotes, let's use the new emotes instead of just the hype. So let's do like that. Let's do it like that, since we've got new emotes to show off. Alrighty, thank you everybody for stopping by. Hugs and kisses, mwah, mwah, mwah. Sleep well. May any ghosty ancestors head on out to the world. Good night, Dee Dee. Night, Spooky. Alrighty, I am out of here. So, if it's daytime where you are, have a wonderful rest of your day. If it's nighttime, have a great rest when you head on off to bed. And until next time, take care of yourself. Wash your face, brush your teeth, eat good food, don't get kidnapped by ghosts. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye! Bye-bye-bye-bye! Thank you for your service this month, ghosties. We'll see you next year. Bye-bye, ghosts. Bye.